Hey kids, today we're going to talk about something pretty serious. In our next edition of Guns for Liberals America, um, it's all fun when it's hypothetical, but when something comes knocking, you don't get to pick what happens to you. You only get to pick how you respond. So today, I'm going to share with you the story of my active shooter experience. Um, for clarity's sake, at the end, it had all turned out to be a giant misunderstanding, and no one was actually actively doing anything. However, at the time, we didn't know that. So it was as real as it gets until hours later. This was several years ago, so it didn't really affect me much at the time. It still doesn't affect me much in terms of like how I felt about it. Because at the end of the day, I was so busy thinking about what my strategy was going to be that actually considering the next steps was irrelevant. Uh, and it kind of gives you the same peek into what conflicts are like when you're suddenly thrust into the middle of some problem that you now have to solve, where the stakes are your life and the life of other people, versus some adversary whose motivations, capabilities, etc., are unknown. So I want to kind of go through that encounter with you and share some of the things I learned and how it has shaped how I walk through every day in a public place and what I think about when I'm going through those places. So this is not something that anybody ever thinks about really. What, how is your life going to be qualitatively and quantitatively different after you go through an experience like this, right? Like people who go through the actual situation, I assume, have a lot more trauma from it because, shit actually happens. But I will say that some of my coworkers who went through this same experience definitely came out the other end unwell, and decided to stay home a couple of days and, uh, you know, I think maybe to this day are still, mm, I wouldn't say traumatized, but they sort of had a rude awakening into how these situations can develop. So I'll set the stage for you here. This is the office building. It's a high rise, many stories. I don't recall how many. It's not that critical. So it was longer this way. I just gave you kind of a reference here. Point is, there's offices around the outside, right? And in the center, there's elevators and stairs, and there's usually desks here and here. And this is a pretty shitty drawing. Point is, my desk was over here. With dozens of other people, right? This was not a small company. It was quite large. They had funding for all kinds of stupid shit, ping pong tables, shuffleboard, you know, beer on tap, just stupid cash incinerating levels of money. And that lack of foresight is really kind of playing a large role in how this all shook out. So we get this announcement over the PA. There's an active shooter in the building, locked down. That's a very strange thing to hear while you're typing an email um, to just somebody in your everyday, and you look around and everybody's just kind of like, what? So nobody knows what to do. In this company, there are a few team leaders for like security who I don't know what their qualifications were, but they were not exactly the most swift, nor were they very assertive or communicative in terms of what needed to happen. This was a company that generally hired people for who they were, not necessarily what they could do. Um, so we end up just kind of all blobbing around till somebody, starts opening office doors and we start going in. So this is a little conference room. It's, I don't know how big it is, 15 feet by 15 feet or something, enough to have a small meeting for a tech company where you're presenting something, right? And it's happening all around, right? The elevator and the stairs are right here in the central core. There's actually two banks, so there's a little hallway between, but it's not important to get all the details. The point is, if you're trying to escape, you have to get to this central core. And if you're going to do that, you're in view of the elevators. Okay. So there's very restricted access in terms of choke points to get the hell out. And there's only two stairways. Once this starts, right, all those elevators are getting called to the bottom floor, just like it's a fire drill. So you're not getting out, right? The stairwells are the only way out, and you just don't know, right? So most people locked down. That was the policy at the time. It's a stupid policy, and I'll explain why. Here's that office or conference room. Here's myself and another person. There's two tables arranged like this. Maybe they were a T, maybe they were an L, maybe this table. It doesn't matter, right? There's two tables. And maybe 20, 25 people in this room, and they're all kind of packed out like this, right? My manager's over here checking Twitter. I'm over here. And a couple of my coworkers are over on this side. And one in particular is standing right here, staring right at me. She comes into play later. Over here are windows, and we're able to walk over and look outside down however many stories, and we see the entire city. Seems like every squad car is around the building at the base. Manager so and so is over here checking Twitter. Smart guy, looking for updates. I'm here because the door opens like this. This guy's here because he knows the door opens like this and he wants to be behind it. I'm here because I want to be in front of it and able to access whoever comes through it right away. It seems kind of odd, but what else are you going to do? You're stuck in a conference room. Are you going to be this guy who's standing right here like a dipshit? If somebody comes through that door? No. Do something, right? So here's kind of the thought process that I went through. Most people got panicked, and I delight myself in knowing that I did not, when it counted, get panicked. I needed a sit rep. Manager was looking on Twitter. We were looking for updates. That is by far the best, available moment to moment reporting what's going on, what's on the scanners, etc. That's your best place for information when something's going down. It's also the best place for misinformation. So keep that in mind. This was years ago before people realized that, we could weaponize this and influence masses of people to go into places that we control and may have other things set up for them. So just be aware of that. So we got the sit rep. We don't know what's going on. We just know apparently someone made entry. There was shots heard on a certain floor. There was screaming. There was yelling. We don't know. Nobody knows. So my first thoughts are, okay, so someone's working on that. That's good. We need that situational awareness so we can plan accordingly. What are our resources? On these tables, we had basically these little kind of office supply stacks and little fidget spinners and crap like that. So I'm looking through those. And then I'm looking around the room and I'm trying to spot allies, people who are doing something. I got this guy over here who I know I'm making eye contact with. I don't know if he's going to move if I move, but I know he thinks, okay, well, this guy expects me to move on him, so I'll at least tentatively try. Everybody else is staying as far away from the door as they can in stupid positions because they can't think through this. So I'm in this room alone with 20 to 25 people who are not going to be of any help. And we've got to figure this out. At this point, it's still very real. So what resources do we have? We have notepads, we have pens, and we have chairs. Above us, we heard people flipping the tables over and barricading. That was smart. But our tables were bolted to the floor. The exits, of course, were controlled and disabled. So it's not like we could get out. There's only one way out. That's the stairs. And that's also a funnel. You get in the stairs coming down while someone's coming up. What are you going to do? How fast can you run upstairs, right? For me, not so fast in dress shoes. The door doesn't lock, and there's no escape. We're not getting off this floor. We're not getting out of this building. We're not getting out of this room. So what do? Now, I would love to have had something heavy like a fire extinguisher, but there wasn't one. So I take notepads and I jack the corner of the door up with the notepads and start stuffing them under there to make the door as hard as possible to open, right? It's the only way I can get it to stay reasonably shut and buy some time if someone starts trying to make entry. I grab some pens, I hand them out to some people, and I say, go for the neck and the eyes. The chairs are useless, they're on wheels, so they're not going to help us at all. That's the plan. So I'm sitting here, standing here, ready for action. This guy is maybe ready, I don't know. My manager might have done something, but he was just so kind of hiding in a tough guy image and scrolling like a madman. You don't know who you can count on in this situation, so you kind of just have to do it yourself. And there's only one option left. You can't run. You're already barricaded. If someone comes through that door, you have to fight. Run, hide, fight is the dumbest thing in the world. It is so dumb because now you have given yourself the absolute worst possible chances of winning. You have somebody who's armed versus a room full of people who are not, and the only resources they have are some notepads and some ballpoint pens. Right? Come on. Run, hide, fight is exactly how to get yourself killed. You should fight. If you see someone, everybody fight. Because the only way to stop this shit is to stop this shit. You can't predict it. You can't prevent it all. You can try, right? There may be some warnings for some people, and you might be able to stop them. But if somebody snaps and they go, the only thing you can do is make sure they stop as fast as possible before they hurt more people. Some people are going to die. Some people are going to be injured. But if you figure someone can take a shot just about every 3 seconds, in 30 seconds, you've got 10 dead people. Cops are going to take 5 to 7 to get there. What are you going to do? Fight. Running, hiding, dumb. Very dumb. Fighting, very smart. When you run and hide, what you've done is you've now offloaded that responsibility and you've offloaded the probability onto someone else who's unaware when you could have been stopping it. So eventually we get the all clear. The police have cleared the building. SWAT's come through. Everybody's relieved. And, kind of over, if you imagine the building again, we had like a little kitchenette over here. And this coworker who was staring from right here, she's staring at me the whole time. She's maybe 10 years younger than I am, right? So we're over in this kitchenette and she's just kind of quietly freaking out. And I'm like, hey, talk to me. What's going on? Right? Like, get it out. I don't want you to have PTSD. So let's just talk it through now. And we weren't exactly friends, I'll put it that way. But she looks at me and she said, I don't know. There was nothing I could do. I panicked and I froze. And I'm standing there looking at you thinking, oh my God, this guy's going to die for us. I just looked back at her and I said, I'm not dying for you. I didn't intend to lose. She did not appreciate that level of candor, but I think she missed the point. It sort of indicated to me that her opinion, her perspective, because of all these lockdown drills that we've grown up with and all this information we've been given that's absolute nonsense. Yet, let's all quietly be compliant and sit in masked corners of a dark room. Like you pull the trigger once, it goes through the drywall. You've already taken out 2 guys. Like, come on. That's the dumbest thing in the world. Why would anyone follow such stupid advice? And yet, it had been so patterned into her. And she sat there and realized that life was about to come and kick her ass. And it didn't matter what she thought. It didn't matter what she had planned that day. Whatever she had for breakfast is irrelevant. Whatever her aspirations, desires, needs, wants, any of it was about to be taken away by somebody else. And there was nothing she could do because she had not planned to be able to do anything. The plan was do nothing. I had another coworker who's a former Marine, went to Afghanistan, went to Iraq. He, the whole time, actually was not in any of the conference rooms. He was standing by the elevators listening. He was ready to rock. That's a stark contrast, right? Someone who's actually been in real combat with real people really trying to kill him is doing something sensible, collecting information, making assessments, changing his strategy on the fly, but not giving anyone space or time or massing up in a group to make it easier. He didn't know if he was going to fight and win. He just knew he was going to fight. Right? He didn't care one way or the other. His concern was, I'm going to stop this. And that's something I learned was an organic difference between 2 or 3 different kinds of people. There's people like him who've been there, done that, and are unimpressed with some jackass who decided to come in and shoot up a place. There's people like me who are thinking, okay, here's what we got. Here's what I have to do. Let's do the best of what we can. Of course, I've never been in combat. I've never been in the armed forces. I've never been a police person of any sort. So I haven't been there, done that, right? I've never had anybody. Well, that's not true. I've never been in a close quarters battle. I've never had to really reconcile with being in an enclosed space and gunfire. So I'm sitting there wanting a fight, wanting to do something, not wanting to just sit around and be idle, but also forced with the prospect that if I go out and do whatever it is I feel like, there might be repercussions professionally, which is stupid. That's a stupid thing to have to think about, right? Should I choose the best strategy and not be concerned for what the boss thinks? Or should I do what people say is the right thing and trust the plan to work? Trust that somebody somewhere in some corporate office said, yeah, you know what? This is the best idea. Based on what? Based on who and what scenario? Like, how did they decide that that was a good thing when it's only ever led to more mass casualties? Why is that the plan? Who decided that was a good plan? Why aren't they being held liable for making such stupid plans and making people adhere to them with their stupid safety officers who have no qualifications, no experience, and no idea what to do? Why do we have so few resources and tools in professional settings? Why is the mentality to just be herded into places and comply? And I think it comes down to this. It's that all of these options are polite, they're safe, and they don't require you to acknowledge that we live in a world where violence can and will come and visit you. It will not be your choice. Sometimes there's nothing you can do to avoid it. And in these situations, it's a lot more polite and it's a lot more gentle to suggest that if you just go and hide, you'll be fine, rather than to acknowledge the very real fact that that is the single greatest way to produce higher casualty numbers in a shorter amount of time. And that the best thing you can do is be more dangerous than the guy coming through the door. I didn't have tools. I didn't have a knife. I didn't have a gun. If I had one, I would have gotten fired. So why is it my job or my life? Right? It took me a few years after that. I got sick, unrelated, to complete my concealed carry courses. And now that I am substantially disabled and far less physically capable than I was back then, I think about that. And I think about the accessibility aspect of it. I'm not winning a fist fight. I'm not winning a wrestling match. Someone decides to come at me with a knife. I'm not winning it. I don't have the resources in my body that a normal human does. But for some reason, people still want to take away the last thing that makes me somewhat equal in protecting myself from other people. And by the way, I think most people have this misconception that if you're disabled or elderly or weak or feeble, that somehow that makes you not a target. But it makes you a much bigger target because people who are predators can perceive that. and they will pick on the people who provide the least opposition, because the last thing they want is to actually risk something while they're trying to gain something. They're not looking for a fight, they're looking to win. So I'm going to ask you to think about yourself in this situation, which turned out to be nothing more than a training video that hadn't been announced to the building manager on the floors below. And someone perceived it to be an active situation, caused the entire department to show up, helicopters and everything. And yet, none of us inside the building were any safer. It took at least an hour. Consider what you would do in that hour if it was really happening. You're waiting, nowhere to go, no tools, no resources, but a bunch of notepads and ballpoint pens and a room full of doughy-eyed idiots who will not help you and will stand there and be shot to death. What are you going to do? I don't know if I did the right thing. I don't know if I did the wrong thing. I did something. I did what seemed sensible at the time. Other people did different things, and some people did nothing. What are you going to do? Think about it. Take care. Be square. Always wear clean underwear.